Hello guys, what is up? It's me Tudal, and in today's video we are gonna take a look at all the knife finishes and which of these finishes are good investments and which of these are not that good of an investment. So before we determine which knife finishes are the best investments, we are gonna take a look at the categories where I put all the finishes in. The first category is the low tier category. The second category is the in-between category. The third category is the high tier category, and we also gonna talk about the different float values and different patterns. So let me start by saying that just because you own a low tier finish, it doesn't automatically mean that your knife will be a bad investment. But also, if you own a high tier finish, it doesn't automatically mean that it is a good investment either. The float and the knife can add or lower the value of your finish. Keep that in mind. With that being said, let's begin with the first category. The low tier finishes, which includes the finishes Safari Mesh, Scorched, Urban Mask, Forest DT Pad, Boreal Forest, Bright Water, Stained, Damascus Steel, and Rust Coat. These finishes are not the most desirable finishes in the game, but on certain knives with specific floats, it could be a really good investment, and some traders are willing to overpay for that. Back in the day, I just wanted a Karambit knife and didn't care about the finish, so I bought a Karambit Safari Mesh, and today I realize that I was thinking right, because some knives don't need a decent finish to be desirable. I later sold the knife and made profit because the Karambit was desired enough. So even with a low tier finish, you could pull off a good investment because of the knife itself. If you go for Safari, Scorched, Urban, DT Pad, Bright Water or Boreal Forest, the knife should be a desirable knife. You could also go with the not really desirable knife, but then you need to make sure that the float is rare, really low, or it should look so battle scarred that it's almost a vanilla knife. The Damascus Steel and Stained are good picks for investments, because you don't see that much of a difference between the floats. The worse the float gets, the more it will get dark spots or look less shiny. That's a good thing about these two finishes. And the Rust Coat looks more rusty if the float goes near battle scarred. On a knife like the M9, the Bayonet, Karambit, Talon and Butterfly, it looks okay. But I still think that the Rust Coat is a risky investment, because let's be honest here, it just looks like shit. That's all I have to say about the low tier finishes. Let's move on to the in-between category, which includes the finishes Night, Night Stripe, Ultraviolet, Freehand, Blue Steel, Black Laminate and the vanilla knives. So what do I mean with in-between finishes? With in-between finishes I mean finishes that are high tier with a specific float, or if they are on the right knife. For example, if we take the Night finish, you could argue that it is just pretty boring, just a dark blue color and that's it. You are right, you are not really wrong. But if you get the knife finish with clean edges and a really low float, you will get overpay in the regular market. If it's on the right knife, of course, the same goes for the ultraviolet finish. I'm currently holding a Butterfly Knife Forest DT Pad field tested with a 0.15 float. The knife looks minimal wear, and that's a good investment because the rarity of the float for the field tested version of this knife and the Butterfly knife itself. There are not that many minimal wear looking field tested knives. You should especially buy into them if you find one of them that holds the regular price for the field tested. Speaking of floats, if you want a classic knife, you should go with a bad float field tested till well worn, because these floats have the iconic CSS pattern. Other than that, I think you should stay away from the well worn float on knives, because they don't sell well, exactly like the StatTrak knives. The freehand finish has a pattern with a lot of random graffiti on it. I remember back in the days when this finish first came out, a lot of people searched for a guy on a skateboard, and some people were willing to overpay for it, but today I'm not sure if this pattern is still desired in the community. But if you are interested in a freehand finish, you should watch out for the skateboard guy, and obviously the knife should look somehow clean. The blue steel and black laminate doesn't have that much difference between the floats, similar to the Damascus and Stained. They are not as cheap as you might think, but the black laminate, for example, does look extremely cool even in battle scarred. Also in this category is the vanilla finish. I know it's not really a finish, but on the right knife it could be a high tier finish, for example on the skeleton, karambit or butterfly. So now we are at the last category, the high tier finishes, which includes the finishes Slaughter, Doppler, Gamma Doppler, Marble Fade, Fade, Crimson Web, Case Hardened, Tiger Tooth and the Lore. Let's start with the Slaughter. The Slaughter has different patterns that are desirable, like the diamond pattern and the heart pattern. What's really important for this finish are the clean corners. Doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be factory new. I also think a Slaughter minimal wear is a good choice, but it should be in between 0.09 and 0.07 float. But also field tested with a specific pattern is not a bad investment. A desirable knife is also a good idea with this finish. But if you don't have the budget, it's not really necessary because the Slaughter does look nice even on a good knife. For the Doppler finish, there is a lot to think about before investing into one of them. The Phase 1 is usually the cheapest. Phase 2 and Phase 4 are both really desired, but obviously the Ruby, Sapphire or Black Pearl finish are the most desired finishes for the majority. I would personally go with a clean Phase 2 as an investment. However, let's move on to the Gamma Doppler. Phase 2 can kinda look like an emerald. Phase 4 has lime green elements and is really colorful. Phase 3 has a turquoise element, and Phase 1 can look on specific knives really good. Generally speaking, if you don't have the budget for an emerald, you should maybe invest in a Phase 2 Gamma Doppler because it's a budget emerald. And don't forget, there are not that many green skins in the game, and only Gamma cases do have the Gamma knives in them. For the Marble Fade, I don't have much to say except for two patterns. The patterns are Fire and Ice and the Swedish Flag pattern. I don't think the Swedish Flag pattern is as popular as the Fire and Ice. Everyone who is looking for a Marble Fade does look for a Fire and Ice. So if you're interested, you should also look for a Fire and Ice. If you're really lucky, you could maybe find one on the Steam community market. For the Fade, I just can say that it is a really nice finish, and you should obviously look out for the 100% full Fade pattern. But usually you need to overpay much more than the normal price. So maybe you should not search for 100% full fade, maybe you should go a little bit lower with the percentage. Oh, and please be careful, if you have budget for these kind of high tier knives, you should really look into it if it's a really Fire and Ice knife or if it's just a fake one. There are also like some fake full fades, and you should keep that in mind. Let's move on to the case hardened finish. For the case hardened, there are a lot of patterns, but one is the most desirable of them, and that's the blue gem, obviously. They have different percentages of blue in them, and the more blue and less dark spots, the more likely it will be that you will get an overpay for it. There are also gold gems, so you should maybe also look out for them. So now we are at the Crimson Web. The Crimson Web should look as clean as possible and have a centered web. But nowadays, even a field tested Crimson Web on a desired knife could be really expensive. That's a finish where the floatant pattern is extremely important. Have that in mind if you want to invest in them, because you could easily miscalculate yourself and choose the wrong or bad pattern. The last two high tier finishes are the Lore and Tiger Tooth finishes. There is not much to say about these finishes, they are really popular in the community itself. The Lore skin obviously matches the Dragon Lore, and the Tiger Tooth also kinda matches the Dragon Lore and yellow themed skins. I personally think that the Tiger Tooth skin can look on any knife really good, but the Lore skin should have a really good float. Other than that, it will look really scratched up and beat up, and I don't think it's a good investment like this. Okay, so in conclusion to this whole video, I think a good investment could be a finish from all these categories, from Safari Mesh to Tiger Tooth. The knife, float and pattern is a key factor before considering to buy into one of these finishes. It doesn't need to be only high tier finishes as an investment. If you go with a high tier finish, you need to be really careful with different patterns and floats, and in what knife you need to invest in. If you go with a low tier, you should try to get a good float field tested for cheap. They will not sell immediately, but I think knives should be seen as a long-term investment in general. With that being said, I hope I helped you out with this video. If you have any questions about skins and want to see more content like this, just let me know in the comments down below and I will reply to every comment. I would really appreciate if you like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thank you guys for over 200 subs, that means really a lot to me. And as always, in the comments I'm also asking what kind of video I should do next, so you can participate in it and write the number of the video. And until then, thanks for watching and see ya later. Bye.